Happy Wednesday. It is a very rainy Wednesday, as you can tell, making my office look very dramatic. It's not intentional. This is just what it looks like in here. But anyway, last week I talked a bit about one of my favorite subjects in school, which was sociology, and I talked a little bit about how that can be applied and used to understand religious practice specifically. I got a lot of good feedback on that video, so naturally, because I crave your affirmation, I want to keep that going. So here's another short, hopefully, sociology plus the church talk, and this one is sort of focusing on how we as followers of Jesus can make an impact on the world around us by understanding how God has made us, how God has wired our brains to work. So as I got to work in writing this video, I realized that it's probably better off as a two-parter rather than one obnoxiously long video. So all that to say, this is just part one. Today I'm going to be going over some terms, some concepts, some big overarching ideas, and then next time I'll really be digging into the application. How do we apply those ideas? What does the Bible have to say about it? What can the church actually do, etc. So this one might be a bit of a downer, but I promise it gets better. There is a huge opportunity for the church in times like these, and I am encouraged by what I've seen people around us doing. So here we go. Let's get into it. So if you saw in my last video, you know that sociology is the study of the development, structure, and functioning of human society and culture. That's the dictionary definition. And society is made up of people, obviously. Like, that's literally what the word society means. It's a group of people, it's an organization of people. That's where we get words like social. And one of the main, if not the main purpose of any human society is to keep its members safe, to keep its members alive, because if you die, you can't exactly pass on your society and your culture, can you? The marker of success for a human culture in a sociological approach, not a Christian approach, we'll get into that later, but the marker of success for a sociological view on a culture is how well it keeps its members alive. That is the entire goal. Its members being alive allows a culture to spread its ideas. Those ideas then live on, and it provides a type of structure for any future culture, any future societies. And a really, really easy way to illustrate this and to see how that plays out is this. Everybody who's gone to elementary school knows about the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire. But how many of us here know about the Empire of Brazil? Probably not many. Maybe like if you're Brazilian, you've heard about this. And a major part of that, the fact that we know so much about the Roman Empire, but nothing about the Brazilian Empire, is that the Roman Empire, including the Republic, lasted 1,480 years. The Empire of Brazil, on the other hand, lasted 67 years. From a sociological reference point, the goal of society is to last a really, really long time so that its members stay alive, so that its ideas can be passed on, so that future societies can build on what they created. And if that's the goal, then it makes sense that all humanity would adopt behaviors designed to keep our societies around a really long time and to help us stay alive. Well, you are all sociological geniuses because that's exactly what we've done as a human species. One of those behaviors, one of those things that we have adopted as humans to keep our societies and cultures around is this thing called herd behavior. And it sounds insulting, I know, because we tend to think of herds as the things that cows and sheep live in, and it's like dumb things live in herds. But humans live in herds too. All that it means to have herd behavior is that we only survive in highly coordinated groups, and that has been true for all of human history. We congregate in groups, families, tribes, clans, villages, cities, states, nations, churches. Humans are always in groups. And if there's a person who is not in a group, we tend to be suspicious of them because there's usually something off. There's usually something wrong with a person who is not in a group. And one of the defining features of a group, no matter when or where it exists, is that they have a group mentality or a group mindset. That's how ideas or concepts or thoughts transfer among people. Use the church as an example. We have this group mentality or mindset that Jesus Christ is Lord. We pass that on to other people who join our society. We gather around that idea and we hopefully spread that on. But these units of thought or these collective emotions, these things that we pass on throughout history, are called memes. But they're not that kind. These are the fancy, pinky out intellectual kind, right? One of the most powerful, one of the most important memes or emotions that human society has passed down for thousands of years is anxiety. And it might seem counterintuitive, but anxiety is one of the major reasons that humanity continued to exist back when we were living in clay houses and hunting tigers and stuff like that. And societies that were high in anxiety tended to last longer. Those that weren't high in anxiety tended to get eaten by the tiger. So real quick, let's define anxiety, because it means something different here than the way that it's typically used. When I say anxiety in this video, I'm not talking about the mental health issue of anxiety. I'm not talking about anxiety disorders. That's a totally different category of things. Right now, I'm speaking just in the cultural sense. So if you hear me say anxiety and you think, I'm on anxiety medication, why is Brendan saying this is a good thing? I'm not. I'm saying that's a very bad thing. Stay on your medication. Get better. I'm praying for you. That's not what I mean by anxiety. Anxiety in the cultural sense is sort of a state of heightened awareness and heightened activity. It's living in an aroused state. So compare your normal self to yourself when you hear a weird noise in your hallway at night. You know what I'm talking about. Like your pupils dilate, your heart starts pounding, your adrenaline surges, your hands start shaking, like you get sweaty. Your body is getting you ready to either run away from or beat to death the monster that is obviously living in your bathroom. You're in a heightened state of tension because your body wants to stay alive. Good body, thank you. I prefer to stay alive, so thanks. But now let's apply that to a more everyday situation. Have you ever noticed when you come into a room and someone in that room is anxious? Usually when it's somebody who's in sort of a position of authority. And you can just start to feel it. Like you feel it starting in your stomach, and you just eventually everyone in the room is anxious. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's worried about something because that one person came in and had authority and was exuding this anxiousness, right? Everybody has felt that in some way or another. And the reason that that happens, the reason why I can come into a room and the leader says be anxious and immediately I am anxious, that's because for thousands of years, anxiety kept us alive. Shared anxiety kept us alive, and God blessed us with that. If there was an enemy tribe nearby, it benefited our tribe to get anxious when we saw them, because otherwise we would die. It would help us to either run or fight and stay alive and pass on our cultural ideas, and we are still wired the same way. As we know, anxiety is incredibly contagious in groups. You could say it's a virus. And here's where we run into the downside of an anxious culture. So far, based on this video, you could easily say, okay, anxiety keeps us alive as individuals. It also allows our societies to last a long time, and it allows us to pass on ideas that matter to us. Win-win, let's all be anxious all the time. And you would be completely right if we weren't living in a post-industrial society. Back in the day, when we had to fight off bears and neighboring tribes every other day, anxiety was great. Anxiety was the best thing you could possibly have. But now, the biggest danger that I personally run into daily is driving from my apartment to work. We live in an incredibly safe era of history. It might look bad if you watch the news, but the amount of violence in our world is way down by every single metric. It's still not good enough though, but it's down. But here's the thing. Our brains don't know that. Our brains think that we're still running from tigers. Our brains work in exactly the same way as my ancestors did back in 798 when they were running away from Vikings. It's a primal fear, and it's part of how we're made, and it's a blessing because God has created us in this way to stay alive. Our brains allow us to go into fight or flight. It allows us to, you've seen videos of moms lifting cars off of their babies, stuff like that. That is all because of this anxiety in our brains. But that same blessing can cause problems for modern society when it's manipulated. And oh boy, is it manipulated. People know how to exploit this, right? News media, politicians, pastors, everybody. In some way or another, most institutions leverage anxiety to gather a following because it works. When people are anxious, they follow. And one thing that we've learned over the thousands of years of human history, the most anxious person in the room, the person who is naturally at that most heightened state most of the time, that's also the most powerful person in the room. I'm sure I do not need to tell you that we are in a very anxious time here in the US and across the entire world. And people are capitalizing on it. The media wants us angry at other people. The media wants us scared of other people rather than looking for solutions across the aisle. We've got fears of government overreach on one side, fears of a deadly virus on the other. Fear, 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 which leads to anxiety, 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 which leads to anger, anger, anger. Smart people know that if they leverage that anxiety, they can get power. Think about it this way. If I can keep you anxious, if I can keep you scared of those people over there, I can leverage that primal part of your brain that says that person is a threat to my life, and you won't even be aware of it. There have been many studies that show that the same areas of your brain that light up when a person sees a tiger or a weapon, that thing that triggers that fight or flight response, those same parts of your brain light up when someone disagrees with you, when someone makes a rude comment about you. It's the exact same thing. The blood flow goes away from your prefrontal cortex, which is where we make decisions, good decisions, and goes straight to the back to sort of the more reflexive parts of the brain when we feel threatened. If you think about it this way, your brain is literally telling you that disagreement is a threat to your life. And people wonder why we're so divided as a culture right now. It's because we think people who disagree with us are going to kill us. So that seems pretty hopeless, right? Like, we're all super anxious. It's baked into us because of how God designed the human race to survive tigers. We're always going to form tribes. We're always going to be anxious and scared of the other tribe. So why even fight it? And the good news is that Scripture tells us that's not necessarily the final story. As usual, as he tends to do, Jesus shows us a third way. A way to diffuse that anxiety, a way to live as a person of peace in the middle of a very angry and very scared world. And this is a perfect time for the church to live that out, to really be Christ, to be peacemakers embodied in this time. We can make a difference here and now for Christ, and that's exciting to me. But we're going to have to wait until the next video to think about that some more, because this one is already too long. I probably rambled too much because I really like this stuff. I think it's fascinating how our brains and the way that God created us down on the basic biological level. It's fascinating to me. And what we're going to do next time is we're going to see how God calls us to a higher level of functioning, a higher level of existence that doesn't rely on fear, that doesn't rely on anxiety. And that is hard. Let me tell you, I am a nervous person by nature. Every time I go into a board meeting or an elders meeting, I'm nervous. I get nervous so easily. So trust me, I'm not looking down on anybody for feeling nervous or anxious. I just know what it feels like. So as always, we love you. We're praying for you. We miss you. We can't wait to see you in person again. That will be soon. Keep your eyes on this YouTube channel and your email. We're praying for you. We love you. And we hope that this time apart has been a time where you've been able to stretch your faith and really live into that as an individual Christian. We love you.